Four candidates spent the day taking a break from the nastiness of the fight in South Carolina, discussing issues of faith in the 2016 race instead. Ben Carson, Jeb Bush, and Senators Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz spoke at the Faith and Family Summit earlier today. And in a state where some 65% of voters identified as evangelicals, according to 2012 exit polls, this group of voters could, once again, be a critical win. Here's just some of what we heard today.
The presidency is a tremendous opportunity to affect the whole being of the country. We have allowed the purveyors of division to hold sway in our society, and hence we believe that there's a war on women, and there are race wars, and there are income wars, and there are age wars, and there are religious wars, and there's a war on virtually anything that anybody can imagine, because they live by the old adage, divide and conquer. And it's really going to be up to we the people, and it helps tremendously when you have a president who recognizes that we, the American people, are not each other's enemies.
I've only made a couple of promises as if I'm president. One is, on day one, I won't blame my predecessor. On day one, whatever the problem is, I'll accept personal responsibility and try to solve the problem. No one will say the dog ate my homework and anything like that. And I will do whatever I can to avoid pushing people down to make myself look big and strong. We need to get back to, we're Americans, and we have a set of principles that guide us.
Our next president must be someone that can grow the number of people who believe in these things, that take our message to people that today don't vote for people like me, who can take the message of limited government, free enterprise, traditional values, and a strong national defense to people who for the last 20 years perhaps haven't voted for people like me. This time, if you vote for me, you will have a chance to elect someone who is as conservative and as committed to conservatism as anyone in this race, but someone who can grow this movement, someone who can take our message to people that haven't listened to us before, and as a result, someone that can unify our country.
Look, my faith is integral to who I am, and actually you're right, that tragic shooting at the Emmanuel AME Church provided a powerful illustration of how faith can bring us together. And it also was a real missed opportunity for the president. You know, one of the saddest things of the last 7 years of the Obama presidency is at every turn it seems the president tries to divide us, tries to separate us on racial lines, on ethnic lines, on socioeconomic lines, on religious lines, tries to pit us against each other. And I think we should have a president who works to unify us, on our shared values.
Caton Dawson is the former chairman of the South Carolina GOP. Hogan Gidley was a senior communications advisor to the Huckabee 2016 presidential campaign and is the former executive director of the South Carolina GOP. Great to have both of you here tonight. Caton, I'll start with you first. You say South Carolina likes it messy. It's getting even messier, referring to the NASCAR libertarians.
No question. I mean, South Carolina is different than Iowa and New Hampshire. In Iowa, the voters go in to diners and street corners and talk to the individuals about ethanol and subsidies and stuff that's personal to them. Hogan and I have been both to New Hampshire and Iowa, and New Hampshire voters, they expect you to come into their living room, sit on the sofa, have a cup of coffee, not once but twice, talk about things that matter to them. In South Carolina, we're going to vote about 700,000 Republicans next Saturday, and what South Carolina voters are looking for is how you take a punch.
All right, 700,000 you expect as far as turnout. Where does that put the state historically?
The largest ever. 605,000 turned out in 2012.
Who's that going to benefit the most?
You know, that we'll find out on Sunday, but I think right now, give Trump credit for creating big crowds and a lot of enthusiasm, but this race has had a lot of notability. Marco Rubio's brought people, Ted Cruz has brought people, the old Bush crowd, so give them all credit for creating a lot of enthusiasm.
Right.
But South Carolina's not a place where you can come whine about somebody did something that was ugly or said something. Our voters want to see you be tested, and the reason why is Hogan worked in Arkansas. The Clintons are coming. I mean, our voters, our candidates better be ready.
Hogan, what do you do to prepare for that? He says the Clintons are coming. What do you do?
Well, Caton's absolutely right. You don't whine. I mean, this is going to be a bare-knuckle, brutal bloodbath here in South Carolina. And Iowa's great, New Hampshire's great, but this is a whole different type of tough here in South Carolina because most of these candidates will
What's so different about the electorate there?
Well, by the time we get here, obviously, Steyerwalt was right. I mean, this is kind of the game changer moving through the SEC primary states. And South Carolina is the pivotal place for a lot of these candidates. It can springboard your campaign. It can sink your campaign. But the thing about South Carolina is we do it with a smile. We say, bless your heart, while we're slitting your throat. And you don't even know what happened. And then all of a sudden you sink in the polls and you wonder, what just happened to me? And you just got gutted like a fish. And that's what it does here in South Carolina. Wow. And it is bare knuckle and it is tough.
All right, so how do you win over the evangelicals? I mean, they're playing dirty politics right now. Is that going to be effective?
Look, the evangelicals are not really a monolithic vote. And certainly they identify about 62% in votes, but they've been voting a long time in South Carolina. They're the NASCAR sort of libertarian vote that cross over there that are looking for a candidate. Trump's caught their attention. But I would caution Trump that this week is going to be pretty pivotal.
Hogan, you seem to agree with that. Why? Why is Donald Trump winning the evangelical vote in your state?
Right. It's less, look, evangelicals have been taken for a ride by snake oil salesmen for decades in the campaign process, okay? Ted Cruz comes to town and parades himself around as the paragon of Christian virtue, and then we find out through the Iowa caucus process he doesn't tithe. We find out that he has no problem lying, stealing, and cheating votes from Ben Carson. Evangelicals do not like that. And the simplest of evangelical tasks, apologize, ask for forgiveness when you do somebody wrong. And on a debate stage, Ted Cruz looked at the camera and said, it's CNN's fault why my mailer went out accusing Ben Carson of withdrawing from the race. That is not what evangelicals like, and they know Donald Trump doesn't come from them. They understand that. That's not the issue with Donald Trump. At least someone's talking to them plainly, clearly, with a message, and they have no problem supporting someone who's not an evangelical as long as they don't claim to be one thing publicly and then something different privately, and that's what's hurting Ted Cruz amongst evangelicals here in South Carolina.
I want to get Jeb Bush back in here because you say the state does not want another Bush and the state does not want another Clinton. Jeb Bush, we have seen, has been using his mother in ads and recently has brought out his brother, the former president, to endorse him. Could this work in South Carolina? Could this be a turning point for Jeb Bush's campaign?
Well, I wouldn't say that the state's not ready for another Bush. We're going to find that out. What I will say is that New Hampshire was the correction for George W. Bush. 18 points where McCain beat him. George W. Bush is beloved in South Carolina, extremely high poll numbers, came back 8 times when I was a chairman in South Carolina to raise money and help candidates elect people like Lindsey Graham, Mark Sanford, the Tim Scotts of the world. So what I'm looking for is George Bush coming in to try to run for the bronze medal with his brother, or is George Bush coming in to do like Bill Clinton and put some sanity to this primary?
All right, real quick, Hogan, we haven't mentioned John Kasich. Obviously had a big win in New Hampshire. Will that carry over into your state? By the way, he did not attend the summit today, neither did Donald Trump. Donald Trump sent somebody in his place to speak. Kasich's response to us was, because we didn't attend because we're here. They were at another event. Kasich, how will he do?
I don't know that he's going to do all that particularly well here, particularly because he hasn't been here very much. I mean, look, I think they're staking their claim in the Midwest. I've talked to their campaign, and they're going to try and perform well here. They want to be the happy warrior amongst all the mudslinging. But the fact is, he's going to try and play well in those tougher Midwestern states. The problem with that is, by the time we get to the Midwest, if he's not attached his name to a victory in the South, he's going to have a problem with the media narrative. One more thing, though, I want to mention that Caton said about George W. Bush. South Carolina feels like we kind of helped make him in 2000. We got the election back on track and got him elected. And it's one of those old adages that, you know, I can talk about my mama, but you can't. He feels like he's one of ours. So when people try to denigrate George W. Bush here, we don't like it. It remains to be seen on whether or not that's going to translate to votes for Jeb Bush. But people do like George W., and it's a good move on the part of the Jeb Bush campaign to bring him through South Carolina.
I got a real taste of South Carolina here tonight. You guys worked in a few good Southern phrases. Made me feel like I was there. Thanks, guys. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for having us.
All right.